So back in October of 22, when we started this whole discussion about 9 principles, it was a great idea. And then the hard part came. And that was really how do we go ahead and take these 9 principles and start building it into our thinking as aviation educators. So we certainly got some experience when we were at Oshkosh and we were working with flight instructors and trying to share the 9 principles and thinking about trying to incorporate them into the simulators up at the Pilot Proficiency Center. And clearly it was a new idea. People were struggling. We were really trying to figure out where we're going to go with this. Each time we had an opportunity to get those that were trying it came back into the room, we got some terrific feedback and on we went. So I was recently given the opportunity to take on a new student. And I've done primary teaching, but mostly it was in rescue missions where somebody had lost an instructor or they were struggling with an instructor. So I had a chance to start working with them in terms of getting them ready for their check rides. So I sat down with my pilot training, and we can call him pilot training, we can call him my learner, or I can call him by name Ryan, and sat down with him and explained to him what the 9 principles were. Now, this is somebody who had absolutely zero experience in general aviation and aviation only in flying on airplanes on the airlines. So all of this to him was absolutely brand new. So what I tried to do is explain to him that I was training him with the 9 principles. And that went fine. I mean, he looked at me and he listened and he said, okay, that's all great. He's using the Gold Seal Ground School for private pilot. And I am working with him in concert as he's going through those ground school. I'm watching what he's doing. I am structuring our syllabus to a large extent on the syllabus for Gold Seal's private pilot. The thing that I've noticed is that taking a look at the ground school and taking a look at the 9 principles, you have to stop and think, whoa, what are we really doing here? Because I have a great deal of experience, I'm able to go ahead and lean on that and sit there and say, wow, okay, how are you going to do this? You've got the 3 groups of the 9 principles. How are you going to think about that? So we began the whole thing with probably about 2.5 or 3 hours of ground, just my thinking in terms of optimal learning and talking about optimal learning in terms of all the tools that are available to us, the kinds of things that we'll be working on, thinking about what risk management is all about, learning about how to fly, what does fly the airplane mean, and starting to go through those in terms of the mental side of the equation, the motion side of the equation, and clearly the mechanical side of the equation. And so as we started to go through and move to the simulator, I found myself indirectly bringing in the 9 principles, or at least those 9 principles that would in fact work with what we're starting in the beginning. And that was, how do I just energy management? How do I fly the airplane straight and level? Okay, now what happens when we want to go ahead and roll or bank the airplane? What do we do with the pedals? How does yaw work into all of this? And the entire time I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking, how do I involve 9 principles in this? And I'm still struggling with that piece of it, not so much that it's driving me in everything that I'm doing now. I'm thinking about the 9 principles in everything that I'm sharing with him. But the thing that I have found is it's not really changing the way that I teach. It's changing the way that I'm thinking about how I'm teaching him. And so that has been an aha for me in that I'm not a new instructor. I am an instructor that has a great deal of experience to draw on. So it makes it easier for me to sit there and move the 9 principles or include the 9 principles or talk about the 9 principles in various ways. So as we've gone into this, it was very clear to me that this particular student learned in a very different way, processed in a very different way. And so I started to think about how I used to train people in the beginning and how with him it may not work that well. And so we started to move things around and moved into the simulator and started doing things in the same sequence, but in different environments. And because he was really struggling to understand the whole relationship between pitch and power. And then also in terms of what happens when you roll or bank the airplane. What do you do with your feet? These kinds of things. And it's not new to, most people will struggle with it a little bit, but in this particular case, it was certainly a little bit more clear. And so I decided, how can we do this in a way that may make it more practical for him because of the way that he learns? And we had talked about the way he learns, and when he hears something, how he hears it, what he has to do to process it, how to see it, etc. So we went ahead, got into the simulator, and I took him to a 15,000-foot runway with no obstructions or anything else in the way, where we could sit there and go around the traffic pattern and initiate all of the things that you needed to do with energy management, with yaw, bank, and roll, with climbing and with descending, and with managing energy and leveling off and flying down the runway and then climbing back up and yawing and banking and doing all of the things that we needed to do with an environment, with something that he could wrap his arms around. Now, we've spent over 11 hours in the simulator working on all of these tools. And after our session yesterday, it was pretty clear to me that he is ready to get in the airplane and to go try and apply the things that we have learned. And so at this particular point, we are moving to the airplane for 3 sessions next week. Now, the simulator is a 182. We're moving to a Cessna 152. I tried to make the simulator as much like a 152 as possible in terms of descriptions and things, but he was flying a more advanced airplane. And so it was heavier, and it's going to be different than the 152 or the 150. And so it's going to be very, very interesting to see where it goes. And so I'm looking forward to the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and talk about how all of this turned out. The simulator offers me what I am going to call, when we're sitting here talking about the 9 principles. And so I have the ability to get him in an airplane that is going to give him everything and then some that we would be able to do in the 150 or the 152, and be able to then start talking and seeing and demonstrating all of the things in the simulator in a very compact environment in terms of turn it on, stop it, go. I mean, we would spend up to 2.5 hours in the simulator working on these various principles. And these are things that you just could not do or would not do in the airplane, simply because it's just so much more challenging in terms of noise and distractions and everything else. We eliminated all of that by doing it in the simulator. I'm really excited about getting him in the airplane and having him have an opportunity to see what the airplane really feels like when it's in a stall, because we've done stalls, power on, power off stalls. He understood immediately what yaw was all about once we started talking about it. And when we were doing the stalls were just breaking forward like they should. Okay, relax the back pressure. Okay, now let's level off. Okay, now with power, how are we going to deal with that? And I was watching it, and the kinds of things that you'll normally see with somebody in a stall in an airplane was not happening in the simulator. Now, that may be different when we get out into the airplane, and now all of a sudden you do have that feel in the pit of your stomach as you're maybe feeling a little bit as the airplane starts to fall forward. But I saw him grasp that understanding of it, and I'm really excited to go out and do falling leaf or elevator stall with him and watch how he handles it. Because in the simulator, he did a beautiful job. You asked if it was a bridge. Yeah, it's a bridge, but it's a bridge that will make the learning for him and for anybody, I think, much better if you get an opportunity to start here and spend the time using the simulator. Now, I may be completely wrong, and I'll be quite frank about it if I go out there and find out that it was a total waste of time. I doubt it. We're in the airplane on 3 times next week. Whether Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, we're in the airplane 3 times. And it'll be the first time for him in the airplane other than our demo flight.